Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining today. Let's see. While we're waiting one more minute or two to get a few more people, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know your role, which organization you're with, where you're based, anything, what you had for breakfast this morning, anything you'd like to share. I'm gonna look over here on my chat for a second.
Welcome, Maggie, Bay Area. Got some California friends, Christy.
For those who are just joining, welcome, and feel free to introduce yourself in the chat if you'd like, and we'll probably get started in 1 minute because we've got a lot to get through in this session. kind of had fun building out all the things that we want people to know about. So oh, that is a great question that we will start with around recordings. So we are going to upload these to YouTube, and we'll be sharing out the links with everybody who registered. So thanks so much, Alice. That was a very good question, and want to get this information out to the most number of people possible. So yes, we will definitely be sharing these. Should we just get into it, Alissa? What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's go.
Let's do it. Let's go. All right. Welcome, everyone. And apologies for the little dings over the next few minutes as people are joining the waiting list. I disabled it on the back end, but it didn't happen. So it's all good. For today, we are going to do a very quick recap of the first session, in case anybody missed it. We're going to go through our steps of engagement, numbers 3 through 6, do 2 case studies actually, and make sure that we have plenty of time at the end for Q&A. For those who are joining, please feel free, introduce yourself in the chat, what your role is, where you work, location or organization. We'd love to hear about who's here today. As we have shared, this is a 3-webinar series, so lovely to see some familiar faces from those of you who were with us at the last session. Today, we're getting much deeper into our engagement steps and going to share some case studies. Quick overview again from last time. My name is Julie Barton. I'm with Julie Barton Consulting. I have been a development director for an organization in the Bay Area. And prior to that, I had a little academic career with my PhD and really love being able to support organizations, whether it's with fundraising, organizational structure, management, executive coaching, and all of those good things to help people raise more funds and be more impactful in their missions. Alissa, do a quick intro for yourself.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Really delighted to be here with everyone. I'm A.May, and these webinars, as I mentioned last time, are just an effort to get out a lot of information from my mind and my brain. The conversations that I've had with nonprofits over a number of years, and my work has really centered around social impact and ESG work over the last 15 years, ESG being environmental, social, and governance work. Most recently was at Salesforce leading their volunteering and giving programs globally. I also maintain a consulting practice, A.May Consulting, that centers around building social impact and ESG strategy at startups primarily. And just really excited to dive into this content and get it out into the world. So welcome, everybody. We're really excited to have you here. Julie, back over to you.
Excellent. So we're going to jump right into corporate engagement. And, for some folks, you might be early and trying to build your first corporate giving. For a lot of you, I think you're well on the way, just offering a couple of different points of entry kind of to think about ways to engage corporations kind of beyond the general grants and sponsorships that maybe a lot of people default to when thinking about this. And so one of the things to think about, as we mentioned in our first session, that there's this huge disparate giving amounts when you think about individuals. And we really, even if you want to be accessing that 6% that's given by corporations, it really behooves you to improve your individual giving and supercharge the relationships you have with individuals, because that's going to be the best entryway into corporate philanthropy that we're going to talk more about today. Because as we all know, corporations at the end of the day are made up of people and individuals. They are not people, and we can talk about politics at another time, but they're made up of people, right? And so engaging relationships of the people who work there are the best ways to kind of think through that. So let me briefly go over the first two steps that we covered in our first webinar. Then I'm going to hand off to Alissa for step 3. So what we've come up with here are kind of 6 steps of a ladder of engagement where you can jump in at any time, but we highly recommend that, making sure that each and every step is really strong before you move on and spend time and energy on the next steps of the engagement, because each one is going to make the ones that come after that much more impactful. So, thinking that corporations are made up of individuals, the first 2 steps that we discussed talk about, systems and how to make sure that you have the system to be able to effectively capture your donors' work information. We talked about that whatever your CRM is, ensure that you're able to track where your donor works. So whether that's, a field that you're going to want to add, asking them when you ask them for their email address as you collect donations, or using a more sophisticated system such as double the donation, that's kind of the absolute first step. Many who are on the webinar shared in the chat that they already do this, which is great. The kind of test for folks that we gave is, if you can easily and quickly go into your CRM and tell us how many of your donors, for instance, work at Microsoft, how much they gave in the last year, or how many hours they volunteered. If you haven't collected this information in the past, it's a great opportunity to call and ask your donors. Make it part of your next thankathon or other donor communication. It's always great to reach out to donors, ask them questions, and get to know more about them when you're not asking for money as well. Step 2 is, once you have that information about where donors work, make a plan to use it. Matching gifts are the #1 most underutilized method of fundraising and getting corporate dollars. So create a matching gifts campaign. Ensure that you're educating your donors about the matching opportunities. And this is kind of the first actionable step towards a deeper corporate engagement strategy. So, Alissa, back over to you to move forward.
All right. Thank you for the recap, Julie. We've got step number 1 and 2. We're going to dive into number 3. What is step number 3? We're calling it impact engagement. And this is, how are you finding meaningful value add with skills from a company or product from a company and engaging with it? That can be done a variety of ways, and we're going to talk through what some of those main ways are. And one of those ways could be engaging individual employees sitting on your board of directors. Maybe some of you already do that. Pro bono project that you've been wanting to get to and you don't have the capacity to really take on, but you need some added support to get to something. Employee resource groups that Alphabet Soup returns, our ERGs at companies. And then product donations. What can that look like for you? So let's get into a little bit more of the meat of this. Why do we want to focus on these types of engagement, this impact engagement, before we look at more traditional volunteering opportunities? what you're going to see, and this chart demonstrates really well, is that you're going to find more gains and more return for yourself, for the nonprofit, but also for the company via these impactful engagements. And you're going to have people feeling more connected to you and your work. So remember, all along, no matter how you're engaging company employees, you have all of this data tidy in that CRM system that Julie mentioned, step one. And if you'd like to go a level deeper in your CRM, we have kind of the basic fields that we recommended that you have in there. You can track how employees at the company are engaging with you. So you can track if they sit on your board, you can track if they are a pro bono volunteer with you, or if they're part of an ERG. So the graph here, like I said, demonstrates really well. All of those red bars are the skills-based volunteerism, and you'll see all of them are larger, taller than the blue bars there. So companies are going to see recruiting gains. Companies that engage on this level with nonprofits have more gain with their stakeholders and their brand visibility. But for the nonprofit side, efficiency, effectiveness, like I said, that capacity building that you just feel like you can't do on the regular, and your reach and the skill gains that employees have. So all in all, that's why this is step 3. So let's talk a little bit more about each one of these. We're going to talk first about board service. So one of the questions that came up in our survey, and that comes up in a lot of the work that we do, is how do you get board members? Just how does that happen? How does that come to be? So where you're going to start, based on the steps we've talked about, you're going to pull from the data that you already have. And when you do that, you're going to make the ask of the employees that are engaged in your cause already. This shouldn't be a cold ask that you're going out into the world for. You should have people that are already bought into your mission. Another piece of this is that you're going to want to get really clear about what level of employee you want from an organization. I've seen nonprofits ask, for someone to sit on their board, and what comes back is I have employees that are in their first year of working at the company that are very happy to sit on a board, and they're excited about it, but it might not be the right timing and the right skill level for the employee. And then again, you're going to want to look at the skill set that you need in that board seat that is going to complement ultimately your overall board composition. So there are board matching services out there. Perhaps some of you know about them that you can engage with. At Salesforce, we worked really closely with an organization called Cause Strategy Partners. There's another one called Board Source. There's Taproot. So there's a number of organizations out there that you can collaborate with that can help you to source board candidates. There's also an organization called the Corporate Giving Network that operates mostly out of Washington State right now, but it's another great board matching opportunity. I didn't see anybody coming from Washington in the introductions, but if you're up there, it's a really great organization to tap into. A lot of companies also have board incentive programs. So these are really cool as well. And these yield higher match dollars typically if an employee sits on a board or decides to contribute board service. This can be a lump sum that the company gives. I know that Adobe has a program that they offer $5 to $10K in a lump sum to any employee that that joins a nonprofit board. And this impacts engagement. The board service component of this is a really good one to get leadership at a company engaged. So I talked about the level, right? So if you want to get a higher level employee at a company involved, an executive, someone that's in a higher level leadership role, they're going to have, that opens up new funding opportunities for you because they have other avenues of funding that they can tap into at their company, particularly their own cost centers that they can contribute funds from a lot of times. So when you have those leaders join you, you tap into that potential pot of funding. just a word of caution here as as I was thinking through the board service, as we were thinking it through, as much as you're able at the nonprofit, on the nonprofit side, to support and facilitate this process, is going to be helpful. Like I said, if you get really clear about what you need, the skill set, how many people you need, the reason companies outsource this service is because it is a very manual process. It's often very high touch, a lot of back and forth, a lot of information has to be exchanged, training has to happen. And that's why we engage with some of these intermediaries that I included here, or I talked about here. And at the company level, we have small teams. So we just, can't take 10 to 20% of our job trying to place executives in board seats. It's not possible. Is there anything else, Julie, that you'd like to add on the board service side?
I mean, that's all great. In my experience working with, small to mid-sized nonprofits, kind of one of the biggest questions that I always get is like, how do we get more board members, right? How do we get board members? And, working with these systems are so great. And, the kind of life cycle of a nonprofit is, your very first one becomes its friends, family. Your second board becomes maybe connections of the friends and family. Maybe somebody uses a financial services agency for their own private use, and then they get somebody from there to come on as an accountant, to be a treasurer, something like that. One of the markers for health for an organization that I use is the first time you get a stranger onto your board who is not a direct connection of existing board or staff members. And one of the ways to do that is look in your system of where, ask donors. They've already engaged with and supported your organization, and go to them and ask them if they would be interested in board service. Does anyone at their company want to do board service? So I would start that way, as opposed to saying, oh my gosh, 5K from an Adobe employee. I'm going to email info@Adobe and be like, hey, does anyone want to join my board? Like maybe you already know somebody who's working there, for instance. So that'd be my tip.
That's great. And yeah, it's back to knowing who from Adobe is actually supporting your cause. Like that is why the systems have to be in place for you to know and understand that. All right, so that is the board service impact engagement element. Next, we have pro bono projects. This is a super impactful engagement opportunity out there. Employees can donate their skills, but companies can also donate their product in this instance. So at Salesforce, we donated our product licenses. Many technology programs will do this for nonprofits, but Salesforce also had a one-on-one pro bono program that matched an employee on a discrete project with a nonprofit about up to 20 hours, based on our technology and the support that nonprofit needed. We also had a team-based program that we ran in coordination with some of the partners that you see below, the intermediaries that I'll talk about in a moment. So before you go down the product donation route, another kind of just word of caution or something for you all to think about is you want to get really, really clear about why you're using the product, what you're using the product for, who's going to support the product at your organization. There's so many times that I've seen organizations engage the person from a company that's a volunteer. And while that's good, that doesn't build sustainability for the product implementation. So really encourage you to build that into your operational costs as you think about, engaging with a product. The free product is great. It's available. It's out there. It's just how you utilize it. But free product with kind of lackluster or inexperienced support or patchy support really never ends well. So just a word of caution there. So as I mentioned, there's some really great team-based pro bono programs out there too. So at Salesforce, we partnered with 2 intermediaries in this that you'll see in this list here, Team for Tech and Venture to Impact. There's many others out there. A few of the names here: Full Circle Fund, Petrifier, Taproot. And I would say probably what I run into in the team-based projects, and just something for you all to think about and noodle on, is the trickiest part about these is scoping the project. Once you have the project and it's beautiful and it's clear and it's, you know, just very nicely outlined, it's companies, it's easy to kind of find the teams to work on the projects. But if you don't have those clearly scoped projects, it's going to make both the nonprofit and the company's lives very difficult. So just make sure that you go into it. And that's why these intermediaries are so key, because they do this all the time, and they can help you scope those projects to make sure that they are going to work for the time frame that you're looking at. The team-based projects we did were 6 to 8 weeks in nature, and we had like 5 to 7 people working on them. So it's kind of hard. It's just a difficult exercise to kind of right size it, but when you get it right, it's really great. And then I'll end this particular slide on Pro Bono Week, and it's at the end of October. It's coming up. This is always a great opportunity to reach out to those folks that are your supporters from a company and say, hey, does your company do anything for Pro Bono Week? Can we do a project together? What, you know, and have that project ready to go scope to engage with the company. Is there anything? I know that you've worked with PenPack, Julie. Did you want to add anything here?
So at one organization, actually, we worked with also Full Circle Fund, had a small group doing a project there, and then one of them became a board member. So this is another way. All of these things are so intertwined that if you do want to find some strangers who are new to your work, who then really get to know you, these types of projects can be really helpful and impactful with that. PenPack is UPenn's alumni group, do structured corporate giving. No, this is the corporate engagement webinar, but they do pro bono projects for nonprofits. Also Harvard, I think business alums do this. So again, look at the alumni networks. If anyone follows me on LinkedIn, whenever I see these types of things, I'll share them out. We had a great experience with PenPack. They helped with landscape analysis for a young nonprofit to kind of see what else is already out there and make sure that we could kind of find a good USP for ourselves in there. So that was a lot of legwork that was amazing to not have to do. They did a really great job. And again, we've got some new supporters out of it who hadn't heard of our organization before and really, you know, got to know us really well. So that's all that I would say about that. So we'll wrap up step 3.
Excellent.
So on to 4 and keep an eye on time and all that good stuff.
Yeah. So, and you can see why these are impact engagements, just, you know, solely based on what Julie just said. It's, you know, you get some new supporters who are really committed to the mission, to your cause. They go deeply on a project with you. So the next one that we're talking about is the employee resource group connection. This is another place for really highly impactful engagement. This is a place that you could also, as I mentioned in the beginning, consider capturing this information in your CRM if you have an individual that is part of an employee resource group. What is most likely to happen is that employee will probably move companies, but they will certainly typically join that very similar resource group wherever they go. So then you know where their interests lie and where their commitments lie. So this is a really good solution when you're trying to reach a specific demographic in the work that you're doing as a nonprofit. It's certainly a more targeted approach. And it can be the entry point of how you come to build a relationship with a company, right? So we talked about the fact that it's, of course, through these individuals, through people that you're going to get these connections. So ask the question, are you part of an employee resource group at your company? Because that might be another place that you can engage them on. And here you'll find a lot of companies are starting to allocate funding towards ERG. So that you have an additional pot of funding that you can then tap into. So we talked about board service and the leadership pot of funding that you can potentially find there. ERGs have funding that they can tap into for philanthropic purposes. So this is another pool to look to. So I'm going to move us forward to step number 4 and hand it over to you, Julie.
Right. We will keep moving there. So we're about halfway on our ladder of engagement steps. We're trying to find a good creative name for our 4th step and just came up with traditional volunteering. So this is
good old traditional.
Well, just volunteering. And I think this is the classic idea of what people might think when we say, find a way to engage volunteers with your organization. I want to talk a little bit about how to do that in a mission aligned way. So, it's absolutely fine if it just doesn't work for your organization. This is one step, I would say. It is okay to opt out of. All the others, I think you should really try to push yourself to see if there's a way to build some programming around it. But we'll get into general volunteering a little bit, and also this idea of dollars for doers. So how can you unlock, corporate dollars to cover the hours that corporate volunteers are giving to your organization? So these types of general classic volunteer opportunities tends to be kind of the photo op ones. You see a lot of people posing in a big group, and sometimes it's not quite as impactful to your mission, and it can almost sit more under a kind of marketing or PR lens for the nonprofit, and that's all right. If you have this type of programming, available, or it's possible to build something, use it. But also step 2 to that is charge for it. We'll talk about that a little bit in a second. So, and I want to be really clear, like if you don't have group volunteering set up, or it's not right for your mission, don't develop it just for the sake of trying to involve corporate volunteers. Don't, what do they say? Let the tail wag the dog, right? In the same way that you don't want to go after a grant that's not really mission aligned just to get the money. You don't want to build out an entire volunteering program just to kind of solve for this. But you're continuing to build, connections and figure out more about the people that are involved with your organization, and then they can bring friends. And it is a great way to kind of exponentially increase the number of folks on your newsletter, on your mailing list, who know and are engaged in your organization. So about dollars for doers, about 40% of Fortune 500 companies have some sort of a dollars for doer program. What this means is that, in the same way in one of our earlier steps, we said you're really going to have to kind of educate and empower and support your donors to do some of the legwork with their HR teams or in the Benevity portal around getting matching gifts. You're also going to want to kind of support and empower them around this dollars for doers to find out what system their company uses, so that they can log the hours that they volunteer with you. This also works for board members and board member volunteering hours. This also works for, these pro bono project hours. And a lot of companies will kind of either pay by the hour, or you volunteer a certain number of hours, it unlocks a stipend, however it might work for different companies. And so, for these groups, what's great about the dollars for doers is if you're doing the same event and you have 6 or 60 people there, if each of them are eligible for some sort of dollar match, you're really maximizing that revenue if you can find a way to have a large group activity. I've got a case study of this to share, but first, Alissa, if there was anything that you wanted to share before this.
No, just to highlight something that you said, just to bring it, forward again, is the dollars for doers, it can be used in the impact engagement moments we talked about as well. So like Julie said, board service, pro bono, like anytime someone is engaging in your organization via volunteering, there is the opportunity to ask the question, does your company have a dollars for doers program? So just wanted to reiterate that. Let's do a case study.
Let's do a case study. So this is from an organization where I was the development director, called Tandem Partners in Early Learning here in the Bay Area. It's a early learning and literacy organization that is focused on books, access to books, high quality books, diverse books. It was a book program. So our biggest volunteer activity was once a year in the warehouse. We'd have 150 volunteers come to sort all of our books, pack them into the classrooms that we were working with boxes, get them all ready for shipment, load them into, I mean, it was a huge undertaking, but it was a great day. Fantastic. That was good, but it was only once a year. And it was a lot to manage all of those volunteers. So we wanted something that was a little bit more ad hoc that we could pitch to companies and do throughout the year. It was actually a development team member who came up with this idea of these blocks that her daughter loved playing with. So you put the stickers on, and then, with the blocks, you can have the head of a lion and the belly of a rhinoceros and the feet of a bear, something like that, or they've aliens and superheroes, and tell different stories in that way. To be honest, there was pushback from the programs team when we first kind of came up with this, because they did feel like it was mission creep. They felt like we're a book organization, kind of could see stories with the story blocks, but it's not what we do. So development really decided to own this. And it was development was going to manage it. Programs, hey, that's fine. We're going to do our own thing here to make it a light lift. So ordered the wooden boxes, huge boxes and boxes of wooden blocks, and the stickers and the label paper and shellac to kind of get it all non-toxic and good for the kiddos and all of this. I'd rock up to the companies and groups with these big boxes. We had an AmeriCorps member to help, which was a great project for them to kind of support. And so then once we had done we got some pictures of it, we had some stories of impact, we decided to start charging for it. And started to, for companies that could handle it, we would charge $30 a person for the 2-hour engagement opportunity. We counted it as programmatic expenses on the back end. We got the money. It was great. It became a revenue generator, cover my time, parking, travel. You have to think about these things too, that it's really taking away from some of your mission. But we had people sign up for our newsletter. We got, in front of tons and tons of people, lots of companies. And what happened also was the program team kind of came around to it and started to really enjoy giving the blocks out, and came up with some worksheets around it and some activities, and made it a extension activity for the kiddos to use. So it's one of the things. This is a little snip of how they are still pitching it on the website. So it's a program that outlasted me, which I love to hear, and just wanted to kind of share that case study. And my last point, yes, Paula, I love that programs came around to it too. That felt really good to me, that they really ended up embracing it once it was up and running, and we had boxes and boxes of story blocks to give to the kiddos at some point. And so my last point here is, sometimes it's not going to be a fit for your organization. We kind of made it work in the end. But if it's not, think a little bit more around, like, what is this solving for from your side or the corporate side? And, do they want a photo op? Do they just want their employees to give 2 hours and they can cross it off on a box? And that's fine. And what do you want out of it? Is it getting more names on your newsletter? Is it getting money? Is it getting, work done that has to get done? Ideally, that is what the volunteers are for. And so Tandem now has an engagement page on their website, and they'll have the corporate story blocks. They'll have all the time saying, we're looking for board members. Here's how that works. And then they've also now added a book drive where you can do an online book drive. It's, less touchy-feely, I guess, for people, but again, it's solving a need of the organization. So think for yourself, can you host a lunch and learn? Are you a subject matter in something that maybe a corporation parent ERG group might like to learn about early language and literacy for an hour over lunch? Could a site visit or an open house work sometime, where you come by with some cookies, take some pictures, do an Instagram live stream? Try to get, if you don't just have a garden that needs weeding, right, or a wall to paint, thinking creatively how you can get people engaged. So, Alissa, I'm going to go back to you for step 5, because we are cooking.
We are. I love all those creative ideas, I think. But to your point, Julie, let's not try to put the square peg in the round hole, or tail wag the dog, or whatever, saying that you can put it in there. make sure it works for you and your organization. All right, so we are moving on to step number 5. My most favorite step. This is like what is really exciting for me to get out into the world and the information. It's all been great so far, and this is all really important. But we're going to talk a little bit here about how you can see those really huge gains in sustainability for your funding. So here we are, step number 5, champions. That is what we're calling this step. It can be ambassadors, it can be leaders, it can be whatever term rings true for you. We're calling champions. So you're going to ensure that you have multiple internal champions at a company, and you're going to engage that ground level support, engage those folks in a community at the company. So what is that going to look like? So what we're looking at here are multiple champions, especially these days with the onslaught of layoffs and the onslaught of companies being very or employees being very transitory in their jobs. You're going to want to find multiple internal champions, and you're going to engage in community organizing principles. So where I've seen nonprofits have the most success are those that are adopting some basic community organizing principles and applying those to the corporate employees that they're to engage. So these can apply if you already have employees from a particular company, or if you're trying to engage folks in new in your organization. So I'm just curious to hear from you all, if your sole function at your organization is corporate fundraising, or if it's not even sole, like if it's part of what you do, raise your hand or type in the chat yes or no. When you were hired on board at that company, what specific call out in the list of skill sets that said in your job description, community organizing skills? Was that something that came up for you, or is that something that was called out in the hiring process? Curious to know. You can do a yes or no, you can raise your hand, whatever makes sense. Yeah, you often will see, Erica says yes, awesome. You'll oftentimes see relationship building there. And fundraisers are certainly hired for that skill set, but this is a tangential skill set that also has some best practices that I think are going to help, like I said, to make these corporate programs really sustainable. So you're going to want to have conversations with the employees you've seen as the most active in your cause so far. And that's why that data is so important for you. You're going to look at who are those folks. You're going to create a job description for those folks and say, hey, I have a leadership opportunity for you. Would you like to take this on? Would you help us organize others to get involved in the cause at your company? Could you find another co-organizer or co-lead to join you? Or you can bring co-leads together based on their activity level, like I said. They can be responsible for recruiting others. They can be responsible for engaging with executives at the company. So that can all be included in that job description. And what I have found is if you make the ask, oftentimes employees are going to accept. They're going to be very honored that you asked at all. So you're going to want to look to those folks, identify and cultivate those champions, train and engage them in your work. And I'm going to walk through a few of those community organizing principles that I'm referring to here, that skill set that's so huge, and the reason why I've seen some organizations just when they implement these, the things just skyrocket there. So let's talk about some of those principles of community organizing. I'll walk through each one of these. We're coming up against time, so I'll try to get through them. And it all begins with you at the nonprofit, and making sure that you have an understanding of the community of employees at the company. And that's just a really solid understanding of just the company culture in general. So you need to understand how does the company operate? Like what cadence of time is this company on? Salesforce was on a sales cycle, on a quarterly sales cycle. It's a publicly traded company, your half cycle is place. So You're going to experience lulls in communication contact during those ends of the quarter. So understand when the end of the quarter is and be respectful of that. You're going to need to understand what the benefits are that are afforded to them. Do they have $2,000 in matching? Do they have 7 days in volunteering, 5 days? You'll have to understand that so you can really capitalize on that community. And then start building those relationships. One of the most important things that it doesn't happen very often that I really want to encourage you to do is help your employees understand the other employees at the company that are supporting your cause. Introduce them, have a venue for them to come together. And this really leads to building deeper relationships there. So this sense of community that you build by introducing them to one another. Oftentimes, I mean, at Salesforce, at an 80,000 person company, we were very often saying like, oh, we have 100 people supporting this one cause that probably don't even know each other yet. So that's why that data on your end is so important. And then you can build those relationships. Have a firm understanding of the company and the culture, who the stars are that you've identified as leadership, give those opportunities. You're going to develop those leaders. Like I said, don't have one person, have at least two. You can have 2, 3 or 4 co-lead or coalition of support for you. That is better. Give the training and the resources, be able to help bring into your cause, but to get to that there, help them there, how they want to, why they want to care about your cause. Why is it important? And you have to give them the resources to be able to do that. Because they're serving as like this little for you. So those are a few leadership established. You've got your supporters at the company. Yeah.
You're breaking up a little bit. I don't know if maybe going off of video for a second, just so the audio can come through really clear for everything. I'm not sure.
Yes, I'm happy to do it. Okay, let's keep going though. We're coming up against time.
I know. I'm like, there's so much. Sure. Okay.
So get everybody moving in the same direction. You've got the leadership behind this. You've got your community support. This really is where your more specific asks of this community come in and where focus on action really shines. So I'll share with you what that could look like in a communication sense in a moment. And so work with this community that you're building inside the company to maintain the outcomes that you want to see. So you're going to make specific asks of them, focus on action, and how do you maintain that over time and work with them on maintaining it. So let's return to that email that we talked about early on in the first session. Some of you were very brave and said, yes, I have sent this email or some version of it at some point in time. So let's look at what this could look like based on those community organizing principles that embrace what we just talked about. So this is the updated version of that, and I'll just read through it quickly. So dear nonprofit supporter, first name, did you know that you are among 100 other employees at your company that support our nonprofit? We're so thankful for your support. What we need most right now are leaders at your company to assist us with the following. And then you've got 3 really direct asks there that will help you build that community of support and get what you need. Getting employees to match their donations or for your dollars funds. We have 2 open board of directors looking for recruiting for. Capital campaign with 25. I'd love to connect, discuss these opportunities. Let me know if you can times that work for you. Sincerely, nonprofit. So that's that updated communication. And hopefully that makes sense. I know we had someone last time that was inquiring and I said, well, we'll get to that, we'll get there. So hopefully we've built to this so that you understand how it's so much more impactful, this email, than the one before that. All right, I'm going to speed through my case study so that we have a little bit of time for questions.
I also don't
So
know who's in our Canva. So
someone's writing on the Canva. Oh, I thought that was maybe accidental. Something was happening there. Interesting. Got a little Canva bomber. Okay.
anyways, I don't know what to do about that. Or maybe writing on the Zoom screen. I don't know what happened there, but
Abstract art.
that's
Abstract.
stupid. Yeah.
Looks good. Okay, case study I'm through is going from $300 to $1.2 million. How does this even happen? How do we get there? And how do we bring forward those community organizing principles to do this? So, gentleman by the name of John Green, a leader in the Salesforce engineering department, was diagnosed with leukemia. He took it upon himself to register for the Light the Night Walk, Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, LLS. And that registration typically runs about $250 to $300. He was like, oh, this is probably, I know I got to get some people surrounding me to walk with me, but he was very happy with kind of making that donation. And he started to think about how he could bring his company community into this cause for maximum impact. So you fast forward weeks later, he leveraged the match at the company. He pulled together a team of walkers. So very quickly, the 300 went to about $60,000. So he started building out those relationships of people that were committed to this cause, but committed to supporting him, right? So he recruited members of his team. His boss posted internally about this and got people to support. And that leads to that other principle in community organizing, getting others to care. So he got the attention of the executives who also donated, brought him on stage at Salesforce's largest annual conference, Dreamforce. So he also got connected to some of the foremost scientists in this space via this building relationships and getting others to care. So he started to develop leadership. He started to see, like, over the first year, it was $60,000. And the next year he was like, okay, I see people that were really excited about this and that I think could lead a team in another market. So fast forward 4 years later, you see that second bullet there. 4 years later, 15 Salesforce hubs now have leadership, and the collective donations over that period of time ended up being $1.2 million. So this is, just think about what this amounts to on an annual basis. You've got 4 years, $1.2 million. If you can do the math really quickly, it's about $285,000 a year that was coming to LLS. I mean, how many of you can say that you've received a multi-year grant, $285,000 for 4 years in a row? If anyone has, kudos to you. Please, share that in the chat. We'd love to know more about it, but it's kind of unheard of these days. So this is just a way, to capitalize, like I said, on those community organizing principles. You got people moving in the same direction around the cause. And John has since moved to 2 other companies, and these teams remain at Salesforce, and they're still raising money for the company, for the organization, because those leaders were identified and they stayed in place and they continue to be committed to the cause. So this is just I think a great example of building some sustainable funding structures within a company, all based on individuals, right? Getting those community organizing principles activated. So that's my case study. Julie, I'm going to hand it over to you for step 6, and let's close it out.
And please come back on camera. We miss you, but just fun with technology. We'll see how this all goes towards the end here. So step number 6, spoiler alert, we're not really going to cover it today. We're going to get into it. That's really what the third and final webinar in this series is going to be. And it means that we are ending with what I think a lot of people thought we would be starting with, which is, how to engage corporations, its grants and sponsorships, right? When we did that survey results in the last one around, like, everyone's like, I want to get more sponsorships, I want to get better grant results, I want to do this. When I say corporate engagement, you hear grants and sponsorships. So we're going to get to that. But the most important thing is, when you already have this community of support, think about the difference of a sponsorship ask of just, hi, you've never heard of us, but could you please buy a $5,000 table at our gala, versus like, hi, did you know that 4 of your employees already donate a total of $600 a year from their own pockets? Would you show your support of them and our mission by buying a $5,000 table, right? So that's the kind of next steps that we're going to be moving into. So I'm super excited about that one. I got a lot of good quick tips and tricks around increasing the efficacy of corporate grants and sponsorships. We're also going to have some special guests that I'm excited about from the corporate philanthropy world for interviews. Some are going to be pre-recorded. We're working on schedules with everybody right now, including Ron Smith, who's the Vice President of Education and Workforce Development Philanthropy at Salesforce, and Evan Schwartz, who's the Senior Director of Philanthropy at the Warriors Community Foundation, and maybe 1 or 2 more. So definitely looking forward to seeing you then. Alissa, if you've got the survey link that you could put it, thank you, into the chat. We've also got a QR code. Always love hearing feedback, and also any specific questions maybe that you've got around grants and sponsorships specifically that we can make sure that we're addressing next time. That's all we've got for today. So open up for a little bit of Q&A here. We had one question that was suggested last time that we can talk about, or any successes that you've done with interesting volunteer opportunities, or ways that you creatively get members, or other things that really stuck with you from today. We're here. We'd love to chat.
Julie, maybe you can, as we're waiting, folks typing, hopefully their burning questions into the chat. Just talk a little bit about what nonprofits could do to recognize donors. Like, I think there is you want to build energy when folks actually are matching, and what are some ways that you can recognize those donors? What do you think?
Well, first of all, have a campaign, have an actual, goal. And, our goal is to get 50 people matching donations. Our goal is to raise $10,000 from matched donations. Our goal is to have 3 new companies give us matched donations. Metrics are always good that you can get people excited about and report back off of. Secondly, I always say, ask the donors, right? If you're having a campaign as part of the field, how would you like to be recognized for this gift? I think that's great. Let them tell you what works for them. But some creative ideas, I always like the kind of society idea, right? So if it's a giving society or a founders circle or a certain campaign, you could call out in your annual report on the website, these are our matched donors. Come up something cute, creative name for the people who do that, and really call them out, especially. Do little interviews with them. You could do bios or blog posts on Instagram, do a quick donor interview. Why did you decide to get matched? How hard was it? What did you do? Help them to teach others how easy it is and impactful it is to get your dollars 1x, 2x, 3x. So see if there's any questions that have come through. I always have ideas and opinions, so I'm happy to just talking, but I'd love to hear from some of the people on the call.
Yeah, does anyone have questions regarding what we've talked about? We've definitely breezed through some really important concepts around how you can engage individuals in your work, build that community, start doing that community organizing. Just curious to hear from folks. Is that something that sounds digestible? Sounds like you'll be able to go down that road. Grant, I see that your hand is up. I can unmute you, or you can type into the chat.
Yeah, wondering if you guys have perspective on how to support nonprofits as well as folks on the corporate side to eliminate the competitive nature and the kind of zero-sum mindset that is often debilitating for spaces even like this, to share ideas, to share best practices, because we know that the wealth is out there. It's just, how are we actually collaborating together as nonprofits and kind of harnessing that community engagement approach?
I mean, I really like the collaborative undertone that I feel from that, Grant. I think, there's a number of nonprofits that are trying to access funds, right? Testament is, folks on this call for sure. And how could you work together internally at a company for maximum impact? We had an example, I can just bring one forward. A lot of times it's like similar causes. I don't know, Grant, what the cause is at your organization, but if you know that you have other organizations that are trying to tackle a problem that might be similar, not exactly the same, of course, you have your own unique value proposition. I've seen organizations come together. So LLS and Be the Match oftentimes do fundraising together at a company because they're so closely intertwined. So I didn't talk about Be the Match very much in that case study, but that's usually a space that they're able to capitalize on funding together. I don't know, Julie, if you have any thoughts there too. You're muted, Julie.
Thank you. Tech today. Oh my goodness. It's a very good question. I think one of the things that comes to mind is this idea of, growing the pie for everyone. And so if you have no corporate engagement or no volunteer engagement yet, maybe finding a similar organization like Alyssa's saying to build something. You're each only getting 50%, but 50% of something that prior was zero, right? Or was really small. And so the idea of, figuring that out, that you're accessing more funds in a way, and maybe you're getting a smaller percentage of it because you're partnering with somebody, but the bottom line actually for your organization ends up being more. The other thing I think I would say in here is, from all the different steps that we've talked about, are many different pots of funding. And I think diversifying your corporate revenue in that way, a company might only have a certain amount. Their foundation, for instance, might only do $250K in grants a year. That is zero sum, right? There is a limit on that. But once you start to diversify into individuals, I mean, I think, Alissa, you said in your last one that actually the largest budget that you had at Salesforce was for matching gifts last year, or something, right? Or
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so,
that's typical at a company. Yeah.
So there's a total amount of grants that they're giving out, but there might not be as much of a limit on one-to-one matching or dollars for doers. Or if a sponsorship is not coming through the foundation, but it's coming through an executive's marketing budget or ERG budget, or you're accessing these dollars from different places. And so not encountering that limit of, we only have X number of dollars and you're all kind of fighting for them, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's helpful.
Thanks for the question, Grant. Hopefully that covered a few, or gave you a few ideas. I think, that's sustainability, right? Like it's an investment when you're investing your own dollars, you need to diversify. When you're working with companies, you're going to be doing the same, because you want to tap into those different pots of money that we talked about. Any other brave souls that would like to raise their hand, come off mute, type into the chat? If we're happy to answer, just, talk about something you're struggling with, or
we'll see you next week.
All right, everybody.
Thanks so much to everyone, and have a great week between now and next Thursday, and we will see you all soon.
Thanks so much.
Sure. Bye.